And you can do it without writing anything down. And you can remember everything you can.
In the early 1990s, Sandra Bullock had everyone's heart and gaze locked on her. She kept appearing in film after film, building a presence people couldn't look away from. Somewhere along the way, she found love in Jesse James, a relationship that looked like the start of real stability. But almost as soon as she settled into that feeling of marital bliss, everything began to crumble beneath her. News outlets everywhere were reporting that Jesse James was repeatedly unfaithful to Sandra Bullock. The weight of it all didn't fully hit until she discovered that one of the women he cheated with was not some distant stranger. It was her then best friend. That was the blow that changed everything. Ever since that moment, Sandra stayed silent. No interviews, no clarifications, no explanations. But now, at 61, she is finally breaking that silence. She is revealing what truly went down with Jesse James and confirming the truth about her ex-husband's affair with her best friend. So, what did she say? And why is she choosing to speak now, after all these years? Let's get into the details. The pain Sandra Bullock never talks about. The childhood that followed her into adulthood. Sandra Bullock came into the world on July 26, 1964, in Arlington, Virginia, but her story never stayed in one place for long. Her parents were already living lives that crossed borders. Her mother, Helga Meyer, was a German opera singer with a voice that carried through European halls, and her father, John Bullock, worked with the Army's military postal service before later taking a job connected to the Pentagon. They met in Nuremberg, married in Germany, and for a while that was the backdrop of Sandra's earliest memories. Her maternal grandfather was a rocket scientist in Nuremberg, and the life her parents built meant Sandra was not the kind of kid who grew up with a simple neighborhood routine. She had a younger sister, Gesine, but for years the family bounced through Nuremberg, Vienna, and Salzburg. German was not a class she took. It was the language she lived in. She attended a Waldorf school, followed her mother to opera rehearsals, and slipped into tiny roles on stage while the audience focused on the woman she admired most. Whenever her mother went on tour, she stayed with her Aunt Crystal and cousin Suzanne, who would later marry politician Peter Ramsauer. By then, Sandra already knew what it felt like to exist between two worlds. She took ballet, studied vocal arts, sang in the children's choir, and carried a small scar above her left eye from a childhood fall into a creek, a reminder that her life was never as great as it looked from the outside. But what she lived abroad did not always translate when she came back to the States. Her classmates did not understand her. The clothes she wore made her stand out, and she said, traveling between America and Germany put her a couple of years behind whatever everyone else was wearing. In one interview, she explained how people treated her and her family like they were strange because they were involved in opera. The teasing never stayed harmless. She remembered coming home from school, bruised, bloodied, and exhausted from the fights she had not asked for. Years later, she admitted she could still recall the names of the kids who made those years so hard. Instead of turning bitter, she understood something bigger. Knowing what that pain feels like made her unwilling to inflict it on anyone else. Eventually, life pulled her back to Arlington full-time. She attended Washington Lee High School, cheered on the sidelines, and stepped onto the stage for school theater productions. Acting was the one place she did not feel out of step with everyone else. After graduating in 1982, she left for East Carolina University in North Carolina, working through productions like Peter Pan and Three Sisters, until she earned her BFA in drama in 1987. Then came the leap. She packed her things, moved to Manhattan, and hustled through every job that paid the rent. Bartending, waitressing, checking coats, anything she could manage while running to auditions. Nothing came easy, but she kept going anyway, one small job at a time, pushing herself into the world she wanted to belong to. How Sandra Bullock fought her way through Hollywood's doors and the price she paid getting there. When Sandra Bullock got to New York, she did not glide into success. She worked her way into every room. She took acting classes with Sanford Meisner, sat through scenes that forced her to drop every bit of comfort, and started landing parts in student films just to stay in motion. One of those small projects led her to an off-Broadway play called No Time Flat. That was the moment everything began to shift. Director Alan J. Levi watched her on that stage and did not see a newcomer. He saw someone who could carry a screen. He handed her a role in the TV movie Bionic Showdown in 1989. And that single job opened a path she had been fighting for since she first unpacked her things in Manhattan. From there came the steady climb. More independent films, more auditions, more long days that did not stop just because she was tired. She even led the short-lived TV remake of Working Girl in 1990. It did not run long, but it kept her moving. Then came films like Love Potion No. 9, The Thing Called Love, and Fire on the Amazon. None of them turned her into a household name, but they built momentum. Then Demolition Man arrived, giving her a supporting role that finally put her in front of audiences outside the indie world. Nothing would change her career the way Speed did in 1994. She played Annie Porter, the passenger who ends up behind the wheel of a bus rigged to explode. She had to audition with Keanu Reeves to make sure their energy locked together on screen. She described the audition like it was a full-body workout, the two of them rolling around the floor to test if the chemistry was there. It was. The movie exploded into a global hit, earning over $350 million and turning Sandra Bullock into someone people could not forget. Awards followed, including wins at the MTV Movie Awards and the Saturn Awards. More than that, she finally had a film that proved she belonged. Then came While You Were Sleeping in 1995, where she played a lonely train token collector who falls into the most unexpected kind of love. Critics praised it for its charm and the warmth she brought into every scene. It earned her a Golden Globe nomination and cemented her reputation as someone who could take a simple story and make people feel something real. That same year, she stepped into The Net, playing a computer programmer pulled into a world of danger and conspiracy. It was not loud or showy. The role relied on tension, fear, and subtle moments. Reviewers pointed out how she pulled audiences in with nothing more than her expressions and those wide, unsettled eyes. Both films were massive box office successes, crossing well over $100 million each. Suddenly, Sandra was not just working, she was leading. In 1996, she joined A Time to Kill, stepping into a legal drama beside Samuel L. Jackson, Matthew McConaughey, and Kevin Spacey. She played a member of the defense team fighting through one brutal case after another. Her performance was strong enough to earn another MTV Movie Award nomination. Then came the deal that tested her. She took home $11 million for Speed 2, Cruise Control in 1997. Not because she loved the script, but because she needed the financial support for a project she believed in. Hope floats. She admitted later that Speed 2 was something she wished had turned out differently. Hope floats made the entire gamble worth it. She played a woman blindsided by her husband's betrayal on live television, forced to rebuild her life from the ashes of humiliation. Critics pointed out how she thrived in that blend of soft heartbreak and subtle humor, a mix that had become her strongest lane. The film grossed over $80 million and proved she did not need explosions or high-stakes action to carry a story. She just needed honesty, timing, and the emotional pull she brought to every role. But even as Sandra's career soared, the same cannot be said about her love life. Sandra Bullock's Untold Loves and the one loss that changed her forever. Sandra Bullock has spent more than 3 decades pulling audiences into her world. But when it comes to her private life, she has always drawn a line. She will talk about the films. She will talk about the work. But everything else stays close. Still, even with how guarded she is, her love life ended up weaving through some of Hollywood's most unexpected names, a timeline people still revisit because of how intense, messy, sweet, and devastating those chapters turned out to be. It started on the set of Love Potion No. 9. Filming began in 1990. The movie dropped in 1992. And somewhere in between, Sandra Bullock fell for Tate Donovan. Back in 1995, she admitted to Vanity Fair that she chased him like a dog. And anyone who knows Sandra's usual restraint understands how rare it was for her to even admit that. They dated for a few years before things fell apart in 1994, but she never rewrote the past to make it cleaner. She carried that love with her. In a 1996 interview with Barbara Walters, she openly acknowledged that Tate was the one who brought out every part of her. The good, the bad, and the parts she had not let herself face. By 1997, she told Rolling Stone she believed everyone gets one great love in a lifetime, and she had already found hers. After Tate, her name floated around with Dallas Cowboys star Troy Aikman in 1995. It was never confirmed, never denied, never clarified. Typical Sandra. Just a rumor that lived in the background while she went on with her life. That same year, she arrived at the premiere of The Net with Don Padilla, a film tech who kept things grounded for her when she needed it. She hinted in a 1996 interview with Detour that she had been seeing someone for 10 months, a kind person, someone who tried to fit into her frantic schedule. She did not paint it as a fairy tale. She said dating had been a disaster, that she somehow kept attracting people whose intentions were nowhere near good. Then Matthew McConaughey walked in. They met while filming A Time to Kill in 1996, and even though they dated in private, the connection carried long after the romance ended in 1998. She told Cosmopolitan in 2003 that the thing that kept them bonded was mutual respect, that no matter what stage of life they were in, even if one of them ended up married, that care would not go anywhere. From 1999 to 2001, she dated Austin musician Bob Schneider, and for once, she had something simple. She described it as low-key, the kind of relationship that did not need cameras or noise, just two people trying to figure things out without the world watching. Then came Ryan Gosling, the chapter people still bring up because of how unlikely and intense it was. From 2002 to 2003, they were linked after making Murder by Numbers. She later explained that Ryan helped her slow down, something she almost never allowed herself to do. She said he had this way of reminding her to let go of everything that did not matter. Years later, in 2011, Ryan called her one of the greatest girlfriends he had ever had. The respect between them never dimmed. But everything before Jesse James feels like different lifetimes now. Sandra met him in the mid-2000s, and the connection was instant. She married him in 2005 and started the adoption process for her son Louis in early 2010. For a moment, it seemed like she had finally built something solid. Then the reports started. The betrayal, the infidelity. By June 2010, the marriage was over. Jesse later admitted everything in a 2017 interview with the Daily Mail, confirming the affair and acknowledging what he destroyed. Even after that heartbreak, rumors flared again, like the whispers about her and Chris Evans in 2014. Sandra shut it down, explaining they were just friends, though Chris openly joked that she was his childhood crush. He said Sandy B was his girl growing up, But that was as far as it went. And then came Brian Randall. He entered her life after photographing her son Louis's birthday party, and what started as a simple moment turned into an 8-year relationship. They did not rush marriage. They did not need the ceremony. They built a family on their own terms. In August 2023, Brian passed away after a private 3-year battle with ALS. Sandra stood by him through all of it, away from cameras, away from public curiosity, doing what she had always done, protecting the people she loved. Even with the heartache, the world only saw a fraction of Sandra Bullock. Behind the cameras, behind the headlines, there was a side of her Hollywood never saw, a life defined by fears, close calls, and moments that left marks deeper than any film role ever could. The side of Sandra Bullock Hollywood never saw. In the early years of her career, people looked at Sandra Bullock and saw the charm and the humor. But her real life was never as breezy as the characters she played. Behind that beautiful smile, she carried experiences that most people never knew she survived. There was the stalker, the man who convinced himself she was his wife. Joshua Corbett broke into her Los Angeles home in June 2014, calling her his partner in the writings police later found. Sandra was inside the house during the break-in, and even though she was not physically hurt, the fear stayed with her long after the police took him away. Years later, when she opened up about it, she admitted it changed the way she moved through the world. She described how she would look out a car window and suddenly break down, terrified that her son Louis, who thankfully was not home that night, would grow up absorbing her fear, her panic, and her shame. Being a single parent only heightened that weight. Joshua James Corbett, 39, was accused of stalking, burglary, and possession of a machine gun, among other charges. Police found an arsenal of weapons at his California home following his arrest at Bullock's Beverly Hills home. He was also carrying photos of the Oscar-winning actress and a notebook containing a letter to her, describing her as his girl and himself as her husband. In it, he wrote, "You are very special to me, and without you in my life, there is only misery." Corbett's lawyer said he really thought he was married to Sandra, though he no longer believed that, and noted that he was mentally disturbed, receiving some help in jail, and had never intended to hurt her. Corbett eventually pleaded no contest to felony stalking and residential burglary charges in 2017. He was sentenced to 5 years probation, ordered to undergo mental health treatment, and issued a 10-year protective order to stay away from Bullock. But the story didn't end there. In May 2018, police arrived at Corbett's home in La Crescenta, California, after he violated his probation. He barricaded himself inside, leading to a 5-hour standoff with a SWAT team. When officers eventually entered, they found that Corbett had died from multiple self-inflicted cuts. Sandra later spoke about the incident, admitting she felt the system failed him in his mental health treatment. And this was far from the first time Sandra had to face the darker side of the industry. Long before the fame, before the awards, she had dealt with sexual harassment as a teenager trying to build a career. The person who crossed the line was someone in authority, and at first, she tried to brush it off with humor just to survive the moment. When that didn't work, she reached her breaking point and asked to be fired, rather than continue to face the abuse. She later admitted that at 16, she knew no one would have believed her anyway. That fear, that silence, stayed with her, shaping the way she navigated the world and the men she encountered, even decades later, when names like Harvey Weinstein loomed as warnings. And while all this was happening behind the scenes, the public created its own stories about her. Hollywood loves a rivalry that does not exist, and she got dragged into rumors about a feud with Julia Roberts. She addressed it with humor back in 2014, brushing off talk that they were fighting over George Clooney. Even when they ended up connected through Ocean's 8, people still tried to pin drama on them that was not real. In truth, both women had been looking for a solid project to work on together, a move that could have given them a strong comeback at a time when good roles were getting harder to find. Through all the noise, one thing stayed consistent. Sandra's devotion to her kids grounded her in a way fame never could. By 2022, she stepped away from Hollywood completely because she wanted to be present, not running from set to set, not trying to survive the grind. She admitted she was burnt out, exhausted, and no longer making decisions from a healthy place. She wanted time with the only people who mattered, her children. But motherhood has not been simple either. Raising Black children in America forced her to confront hard conversations early. She talked openly about discussing racism, sexism, and homophobia with her son and how he understood these things existed, even if he could not understand why people behaved that way. On Red Table Talk, she explained how scared she felt as a white parent, trying to prepare them for a world that does not always treat everyone fairly. She worried they would absorb her fear, her anxiety, and her constant urge to protect them. She wanted them to see the world clearly, even if it meant letting them watch things that most parents would hide. Sandra Bullock's life has been full of beauty, success, motherhood, and love. But it has also been marked by moments that nearly broke her. Somehow, she kept moving, kept raising her kids, kept living. But while Sandra might have reclaimed and survived all these trials, there was once a chapter in her life that tested her like no other. At 61, Sandra Bullock confirms the truth about her husband's affair with Bestfriend. Sandra Bullock and Jesse James were once the kind of couple people couldn't stop watching. Their relationship began like a fairy tale, with a spark that seemed to promise stability and happiness. But the fairy tale didn't last. Their eventual divorce became a media frenzy, discussed across the globe, fueled by rumors and speculation that turned their private life into a public spectacle. It all started when Bullock arranged a Christmas gift for her 10-year-old godson, who had a love for motorcycles. She took him to West Coast Chopper's Long Beach headquarters in 2003, where Monster Garage host Jesse James agreed to give them a special tour. After the visit, she returned to her office to find a missed call from James. Sensing that James might be interested in her, she instructed an employee not to give him her personal number, asking that her email be provided instead so she could politely decline contact. She turned him down repeatedly, but James persisted, eventually catching her off guard with a virtual game of 20 questions. Bullock recalled initially feeling incredulous, thinking he would ask mundane mechanical questions, but James instead asked thoughtful questions unrelated to motorcycles. Through this back and forth, Bullock came to understand James on a deeper level. She explained that it was not something she had sought or needed, but she recognized that he had taught her about patience, tolerance, and the complexity of another human being. At first, Bullock admitted to assuming James was the kind of person she might never connect with, someone with attitudes and beliefs she couldn't imagine relating to. James also had his own preconceived notions about her, expecting a cold, distant Hollywood actress. But after speaking with her, he realized she was far from the assumptions he had carried. Their courtship moved quickly, with James proposing to Bullock using a vintage Tiffany diamond ring from 1910. They kept their engagement private, planning a wedding the following year. In July 2005, they invited 270 guests to a ranch in the San Ynez Valley, under the guise of celebrating Bullock's 41st birthday. The wedding itself was a mix of personal touches. Bullock wore satin cowboy boots and crafted James's wedding band herself in his shop. Bullock revealed that they had originally planned a cross-country road trip for their honeymoon, but canceled it after realizing they were being followed by paparazzi. When they married, James was already a father of 3, and Bullock embraced her role as a stepmother. She spoke about the nature of family, emphasizing that giving birth was not a requirement to feel connected to children. They even moved across the street from James's ex-wife to be closer to his 2 children with her. When James's second wife went to prison in late 2008, Bullock and James took responsibility for his youngest child, Sonny. Despite the media attention on their lives, James described the everyday reality of parenting as simple and routine, taking kids to school, preparing meals, and navigating the daily responsibilities that defined their household. At the peak of their relationship, they shared words of admiration for one another. On the night Bullock won her first Oscar in 2010, James expressed the profound pride he felt in supporting her, noting that he tried to match the commitment she had consistently shown to him and his own work. He spoke about her beauty and the way she took his breath away, sharing moments of awe and admiration that were deeply personal. But the illusion of a perfect marriage shattered just 10 days later. In Touch Weekly published a report based on tattoo artist Michelle "Bombshell" McGee's claims, revealing an 11-month-long affair with James while Bullock was filming The Blind Side. James acknowledged the allegations publicly, admitting that most were untrue, but taking full responsibility for his actions and the pain they caused Bullock and his children. He described the situation as a consequence of his poor judgment and expressed hope that his family might one day forgive him. Following the initial scandal, additional women came forward, claiming involvement with James while he was married, including one whose alleged affair lasted 2 years. The mounting accusations led James to check into rehab to address personal issues. About a month after the public revelations, Bullock filed for divorce. She expressed feelings of sadness and fear, but also revealed a significant personal development. She had adopted a baby. Bullock welcomed her son, Louis Bardo, earlier that year, choosing to keep his arrival a secret until after awards season. She characterized her post-divorce relationship with James as different, bittersweet, shaped by understanding, forgiveness, and support for his recovery. She clarified that decisions regarding his involvement with Louis would unfold on a day-by-day basis. James reflected on the void left by not being able to participate in Louis's life, acknowledging the hole it created in his heart. In interviews, he admitted to being completely transparent with Bullock about his actions, but refused to disclose the full extent of his involvement with other women, emphasizing that the consequences of his choices were inescapable. He acknowledged a pattern of self-sabotage, admitting that he may have even anticipated being caught. James later returned to the public eye with a memoir, reflecting on his time in the Hollywood world and his personal failings. He described the controlled nature of his former lifestyle and admitted it was unhealthy, acknowledging that the problems in their marriage stemmed from his insecurities. He admitted that Bullock's declarations of love often felt distant to him, as he struggled with feelings of inadequacy and self-doubt. In the years following the scandal, Bullock remained largely silent, speaking only indirectly about the ordeal. She expressed gratitude for her current life, emphasizing that she had no desire to revisit the past. She recognized the painful trajectory of her experiences, but framed them as essential to understanding the meaning of family. Meanwhile, James continued his tumultuous personal life, dating and briefly getting engaged to Kat Von D before the engagement ended. Allegations surfaced that dozens of women had been involved with James while he dated Von D. He later married drag racer Alexis DeJoria in 2013, a union that ended in 2020 amid reports of infidelity. James remarried for a fifth time in July 2022 to a 29-year-old former adult film actress, Bonnie Rotten, continuing a pattern that mirrored the chaos of his earlier relationships. Through it all, Bullock emerged as a figure of resilience. She endured public betrayal, heartbreak, and the sudden thrust of private pain into public consciousness. Yet, she moved forward, choosing to focus on her son and the family she was creating on her own terms. She did not offer sensationalized commentary or engage in public downgrading, but instead held to the principles that guided her throughout her life: integrity, love, and a commitment to the people she cares for most. What are your thoughts on the divorce? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.